We've reached Bethany with Jesus and the apostles, and we've encountered Lazarus and Martha. But there's another sister who's grieving Lazarus greatly and grieving Martha, and that's Mary Magdalene. And we learn that because of Mary Magdalene's behaviour, their mother died. And we heard from Lazarus when he first encountered Jesus, the mother had died a few years previously. So Mary Magdalene had been leading a wanton lifestyle for some years before we encounter her in the poem of the man God. So she's hardened in her lifestyle. But in the dialogue between Jesus and Lazarus, we find some very instructive lessons. We all say the Our Father, and it says, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." This actually blows Protestantism out the water, because if you're guaranteed salvation, then why do you have to forgive people to get forgiveness from God? It's clear from the structure of the Our Father that God forgives us, God the Father forgives us. If we forgive others, we must forgive others first to attract the forgiveness of our Heavenly Father. But Protestantism is blown out the water for many reasons. That's merely one of them. But going back to what I've been reading, Jesus emphasises to Martha that she must forgive Mary Magdalene, her sister, even though Mary Magdalene caused the death of their mother and caused huge grief, clearly, to her mother in her last years. Jesus emphasises again and again. Martha said that perhaps that the Eternal Father is not hearing her prayers because she's not forgiving Mary Magdalene. And Jesus affirms that's the case. So we have it in clear, plain, neon signs here. If we have any unforgiveness for anybody on earth, they could have done some terrible things to us. We can pray till the cows come home. Our prayers are not going to be answered. We have to forgive everybody without exception. Absolutely without exception. We are Catholics. We're not people out there of the world. Hopefully we're not just nominal Catholics who aren't taught the faith properly and do not have the benefit of knowing what Jesus says in the poem of the man God. In fact, we don't need the benefit of the poem of the man God. Jesus is plain as a pikestaff in the Gospels. But we read the Gospels in a way which skims them. And I think we don't take them too seriously, unfortunately. But when we get the poem of the man God, we've got here the actual words of Jesus as a kind of video film being played in front of us. And he's saying expressly in a particular situation to a particular good woman. A good woman. Lazarus calls Martha pious. And she is told by Jesus, your prayers are not going to be heard because you're not forgiving. Jesus entrusts her with a mission to get Lazarus to forgive Mary Magdalene as well. Because without that forgiveness, their prayers will hit a brick wall and will not reach heaven. A major lesson for us, a difficult lesson, but unless we learn it, I wouldn't say we're wasting our time praying, but our prayers will be, in a certain degree at least, wasted. Their full force will never be achieved. There's also a valuable lesson for Catholics who look at the world around us. The laws of the United Kingdom have become bizarre in certain respects, which I need not go into to avoid any YouTube sanction. But they are bizarre. And that is all over the Western world now. Things which we wouldn't have seen, even if you're a young man or woman, when you were born, it was never contemplated the laws of the Western world would be as they are. But here's what Jesus says when Martha says to him that Mary Magdalene is possessed. Jesus replies, "And what is diabolic possession but a disease of the spirit infected by Satan to the extent of degenerating into a spiritual diabolic being?" How can certain perversions in human beings be explained otherwise? Perversions that make man much worse than beasts in ferocity, more lewd than monkeys in lust, and so on. And to make a hybrid in which man, animal, and demon are mingled. That is the explanation of what amazes us as an inexplicable monstrosity in so many creatures. Do not weep, forgive. So we know then, Jesus tells us that possession is a disease of the spirit infected by Satan, and that degenerates the being into a spiritual diabolical entity. And that's why we see people, as Jesus said, more lewd than monkeys in lust, and makes people a mixture of man, animal, and demon. The solution, Jesus says, do not weep. Do not weep, people of Britain, people of the United States, people of the entire Western world. Do not weep. Do not even think that marches and attempts to adjust the laws of parliaments will be the solution. Jesus says, forgive. And in addition to forgiveness, prayer. That's how the West will be won. To paraphrase the famous film, which I think starred Gregory Peck. So Jesus, 2,000 years ago, in a conversation with St. Martha, explains to us the core problem that we have in those crazy laws that are now characteristic of the Western nations, and which many African nations and Muslim nations find absurd and abhor. Here's the explanation, and here's the solution.